Reproduction. Fantastic. See this little guy? That's called a sperm cell. But there are many different names for sperm cells depending on the stage of production that they're at. So we're going to be talking for this video about things related to sperm and sperm production. First, a quick fact here. If there was a prize to go to the biggest sperm in nature, it would belong to a tiny fruit fly called Drosophila bifurca, whose coiled sperm would measure more than 2 inches long if straightened out. That doesn't seem such a big deal, but when these flies are really small, so this nice source has put that in perspective. You can maybe see it in the link as well too. If there were a guy standing here, his sperm cell, if we had the same proportions, the sperm cell would be stretching out to the 40-yard line. That's a pretty big sperm cell, probably mostly tail, but helpful for propelling it from one place to another. In humans and any kind of production of sperm, we call it spermatogenesis. Spermatogenesis is a term for production of sperm. And we're going to give sperm its proper name. It's spermatozoa. Now there's going to be spermatids, spermatogonia, spermatozoa. Don't get too confused. When we talk about sperm, the swimming sperm cells, we're talking about spermatozoa. Okay, fancy name for production of sperm is spermatogenesis, and it occurs in seminiferous tubules. These are obviously found in the testicles, in the testes, where sperm is actually produced. So here is a picture of a cross section through some of these seminiferous tubules where the sperm is actually produced, and we'll use a diagram to help make sense of this. So this is really what we're kind of looking at here, the testis tissue. So if you simplify it into these different regions here, then you'll be able to recognize a couple things. This is the wall of the seminiferous tubule where we go through various stages of production of sperm. Fluid inside the seminiferous tubules. Once the sperm are actually ready to go and detach, then they actually swim down through this particular area here. You have blood vessels that are obviously supplying nutrients, oxygen, glucose, to keep all these cells alive in the production. And then you have special areas containing cells here. They're interstitial cells. Leydig cells is another way to say it. But either way, as long as you remember that, oh well, I think it's easy for us to remember that testicles help us to produce testosterone. Where testosterone is produced is actually in these specific areas, these Leydig cells. So it's not particularly clear here, but they are cells that are in between the seminiferous tubules. Okay, now we jump into the details. You should know already that the production of gametes is done via meiosis. Mitosis is the process of producing clones or identical cells, and the only place where we produce non-identical cells is in the production of gametes, or the production of sperm cells and egg cells. Egg cells we'll look at in the next video. But here we're talking about the production of sperm cells, and there are specialized cells that are helping, like this one that looks like an alien right here. It's called a Sertoli cell. We're going to see in a second, and then you'll see that the sperm cells go through various stages. Now, if you remember meiosis, you remember that we start with diploid cells that have 46 chromosomes, and we end up with haploid cells that have only 23 chromosomes and a unique mix. So as we're going through these stages really quickly here, keep in the back of your mind the processes that are happening in meiosis. For example, in prophase 1, you have crossing over, you have random assortment, and this all contributes to producing a unique variety of genes that make each sperm cell unique. And when we're talking about all the possibilities you can have just from meiosis, you can start to see just why a single ejaculation containing hundreds of millions of sperm cells could all be individual and unique. So try to follow the path of the number of chromosomes. So we'll talk about 2n. 2n means a diploid number, and n means haploid number. So if you're looking at the tissue, then you've got the basement membrane that kind of holds it all together, kind of the outside of the seminiferous tubules. Spermatogonium, these are the first stages here. I'm going to add some notes to this in a sec. Spermatogonium. The primary spermatocytes, you can guess what comes next. They develop into secondary spermatocytes. They turn into spermatids, and finally we can call them spermatozoa. So here in the outer layer, you've got these cells here. They're diploid. They are still 46 chromosomes, and they just reproduce by mitosis and make more copies of themselves, dividing endlessly. These diploid cells grow larger, and at this point we call them primary spermatocytes. They are still diploid because they haven't undergone the first stage of division. Remember, there's two divisions in meiosis. Each primary spermatocyte carries out the first division of meiosis to produce two secondary spermatocytes. So already after the first division of meiosis, remember, all the homologous chromosomes are separating. So now we're already down to haploid cells. And when they're haploid, we call them secondary spermatocytes. Each secondary spermatocyte undergoes the second round of division, and during the second round of division, the sister chromatids are splitting. And if you actually follow the number of chromosomes, the individual strands of chromosomes or chromatids that are left, we are still at a haploid number, which is the N. Okay, so 2N, where N equals 23, these would be 46. In this case, we're down to 23 chromosomes here. These spermatids now need to mature, and they go join this alien-looking cell called a Sertoli cell, and they will develop into spermatozoa. So this helps them to mature, and this is where the cell differentiation really happens, and you actually get those mature cells that are ready to actually swim out and detach and go through this little liquid area down here. Okay, what else do we have? Sperm will detach. Oh, that's what I just said. Okay, they detach from the Sertoli cells and are eventually carried out of the testis by the fluid in the seminiferous tubule. So if you look back at the diagram from before, you'll see that the fluid area, the lumen, I guess you could say, L-U-M-E-N, refers to an opening inside a tube, is going to allow this to actually happen, and the sperm cells can take off. FSH, if you recall, this is a hormone that's involved in the menstrual cycle. FSH stands for follicle stimulating hormone. It's produced by the pituitary gland, and it helps prepare an ovum for release. Turns out that these hormones, FSH and LH, that you thought were only in the menstrual cycle, are also important in men for helping to control sperm production. Just like both sexes have different concentrations of estrogen and progesterone. So we've got something here to look at as well too. So we're looking at FSH is important, and also from the pituitary gland, same thing. And the primary role of FSH in men in sperm production is to help the primary spermatocytes go through that first division of meiosis, to go from 2N, or from 46 chromosomes, to 23 chromosomes. It also helps to stimulate the action of testosterone on Sertoli cells. And testosterone, the role of testosterone, which is produced in these cells that were mentioned, either you can call them Leydig cells or interstitial cells, stimulate the development of secondary spermatocytes into mature sperm. So FSH helps the first step, and then testosterone helps those secondary spermatocytes to actually turn into mature sperm. So if you don't have testosterone, that is going to affect the production of sperm cells. LH, luteinizing hormone. In the menstrual cycle in women, this helps to signal for the release of the ovum, for ovulation to actually happen, produced by the pituitary gland. In our case here, it helps to stimulate the secretion of testosterone. And all of these hormones are interacting with each other in different ways. So it's important to understand that these hormones are not exclusive to women. They play roles in men as well too. And so make sure you understand their roles in sperm production as well too. If you remember how to draw the diagram of the male reproductive system, front view or side view, you should remember that there were two specific little bits there called the prostate and the seminal vesicles. You should know that the vagina is a particularly acidic place, and it's good it's like that because it'll kill some bacteria and prevent some infections. Sad thing is, it's also not so good for the sperm cells, and it can end up killing the sperm cells. So really fantastic. When sperm get released, they get released in semen. There's a lot of fluid there. Those fluids are not just a place to help them move, they're also there for a particular reason. See if you can match these up. The epididymis, the seminal vesicles, and the prostate gland do these three roles. Fluid from one of these things contains nutrients such as fructose. That's good for energy to keep them swimming. Just keep swimming. Just keep swimming. Also contains mucus. One of these things helps the sperm cells mature to become able to swim. That's a location. And another one of these things contains fluid with mineral ions and happens to be alkaline. Why is being alkaline good? Well, it helps to neutralize the acidic environment in the vagina where the sperm cells will be deposited. Did you guess? Good job. Good job. And good job. Okay, great news for sperm cells. You got food, you got lunch being packed in fructose, and you've got a layer of protection, like an invisibility cloak from Harry Potter. I don't know, is that true? I haven't watched Harry Potter for a long time. Okay. The summary in terms of meiosis, if you look at all of that, remember we're starting at diploid number. Through mitosis, they just make copies of each other, okay, at the very beginning, and you get a whole bunch of diploid cells. They get larger, and you turn into a primary spermatocyte. The first division makes you a haploid cell. I think one place where students might get confused, you might be thinking, well, if it's 2n and it divides for one time and it goes to n, I get that. When it divides again, how come it doesn't become n divided by 2? For that, you really have to look at a diagram, go back and find one of the videos that I made about meiosis where I actually drew out every single chromosome. So you can check that out. Because when this happens, you're actually splitting up the homologous chromosomes. The homologous chromosomes are actually, they contain unique genetic information of alleles. When you split that up, you actually are reducing the number of chromosomes in half. When we go through the second division, it's just the single chromosome, which is made up of two sister chromatids. So remember, when we have a chromosome, you call this is a chromosome, right? But as a chromosome prepares for division, it produces a copy of itself called a sister chromatid. But at this point, I still call this one chromosome. This is still one chromosome consisting of two sister chromatids. So at this point, you have chromosomes that look like this. But when they split up, when these divide, you just end up with the two sister chromatids separating. But now I still call this one chromosome, and this is one chromosome. Therefore, the number here is still the same. Haploid number is still the same. Okay. If that didn't make sense, then really go back and take a look at. You have to go and review meiosis and what's happening with meiosis. And then finally, through cell differentiation, you end up with these specific sperm cells that are made. Okay, that was a lot of information. The production of sperm is very complicated, but it's a combination of understanding how meiosis works. So if you understand how meiosis works, you should be okay. And then a few specific vocabulary words: primary spermatocyte, secondary spermatocyte, spermatids, spermatozoa, spermatogonia up at the top. Okay, there are a couple different things. So next time will be oogenesis. You can say that however you want. We'll talk about that. I'll have a lot of fun. I'll spend 3 minutes trying to pronounce this word. Okay, if you have questions, please post them. Hope you enjoyed that summary of sperm production.